The girl ran out the front door, scanning the street frantically. "Help! Somebody please help!" she shouted. As luck would have it, their next door neighbor, an older man named Mr. Eke, was coming home from the market. Seeing the distress on Chizitere's face, he hurried over. "What is it, my dear?" "It's Grandma, she collapsed," Chizitere said. In a peaceful town in Abia State, Nigeria, a soft golden light battered the red earth as the sun began to set. In a modest bungalow at the end of a dusty lane, 14-year-old Chizitere bent over a well-worn book. Her lips moved as she read aloud, each word enunciated carefully. On the wooden chair beside her sat her grandmother, Norma, a retired school teacher with the silver streaks in her hair and wisdom etched into the lines of her face. The small living room smelled of old books and the evening's cooking, a comforting blend of knowledge and nourishment. "Louder, my child," Grandma Norma gently corrected, tapping the rhythm of the sentence with a pencil. "Pronounce each syllable carefully." Chizitere adjusted her posture and read again, voice louder and steadier this time. Outside, the laughter and shouts of children playing on the street drifted through the open window. The girl paused for a second, glancing toward the sound of carefree giggles and running feet. A pang of longing tugged at her heart. She could see in her mind the other kids skipping rope or chasing a ball in the orange glow of twilight. But before her thoughts wandered too far, her grandmother's voice brought her back. "Focus, Chizitere," Norma said quietly but firmly. Her eyes, though stern, held warmth. She reached over and patted the girl's hand. "There will be time for play later. Right now, we learn." Chizitere nodded and resumed reading. The words came more naturally now. The story on the page was about a brave girl who solved a riddle to save her village. And as she read, Chizitere could not help but find encouragement in the tale. She stumbled on a longer word, extraordinary, and Grandma Norma immediately intervened. "Extraordinary." The grandmother broke the word into parts slowly, her voice patient and precise. Together, they repeated the pronunciation until Chizitere mastered it. The girl's face lit up with a small smile of triumph. "Very good," Grandma Norma said, allowing a proud grin. She seldom gave lavish praise, but her nod of approval was enough to make Chizitere's heart swell. Moments like this made the hours of study worthwhile. After reading practice, they moved on to mathematics. On the low table between them lay an old exercise book filled with neatly written numbers and equations. Norma opened it to a fresh page, then read out a problem. If a train leaves the station at 3 p.m. and travels at 60 kilometers per hour, how far will it go by 6 p.m.? Chizitere picked up her pencil, thinking carefully. Such word problems were her grandmother's favorite nightly challenge. The girl imagined a little train chugging along. 3 hours, she murmured, working it out. In 3 hours at 60 per hour. That would be 180 kilometers, Grandma. Show me, came the prompt reply. It was not enough to speak the answer. Grandma insisted she write down the steps, step by step. Chizitere wrote 60 times 3 is equal to 180 kilometers. Norma examined the working and nodded. Correct. Now, if the train continued to travel for another 2 hours at the same speed, what would the total distance be? Chizitere's brow furrowed thoughtfully for a moment. Another 2 hours means 2 times 60 equal to 120. She wrote quickly. So, 180 plus 120 is equal to 300 kilometers. Yes, her grandmother confirmed. The trace of a satisfied smile on her lips. They continued like this for an hour, reading comprehension passages followed by questions, writing practice where Chizitere carefully copied a paragraph to improve her handwriting, and even a bit of poetry memorization. Each evening's routine was the same. structured yet comforting. Grandma Norma believed that reputation and discipline were keys to learning, and so she guided her granddaughter through one exercise after another. Sometimes, as the oil lamp flickered, Chistere's eyes grew heavy with fatigue. On those occasions, Grandma would notice the droop of the girl's eyelids. She would reach out and squeeze her shoulder gently. "Just one more poem, and then we'll rest," she would say softly. Despite the sternness of their practice, there was deep love beneath it. Norma had a way of encouraging her grandchild that made even the difficult parts of studying feel like an adventure. If Chizitere struggled, Grandma would patiently break down the problem or phrase until it was understood. If the girl excelled, Grandma would simply give that small nod of approval, which was worth more than any playtime to Chizitere. On that particular evening, after finishing their final exercise, a short Igbo proverb written in English for handwriting practice, Grandma Norma closed the book and looked at her granddaughter with pride. "You have done well today," she said quietly. Chizitere's eyes shone at the rare verbal praise. "Thank you, Grandma," she replied, respectfully closing the book and stacking her papers neatly as she had been taught. Outside, the street had grown quieter. Many of the neighborhood children had been called home by their parents as night fell fully. A few frogs croaked in the distance and crickets began their nightly chorus. The warm, humid air of the Nigerian evening settled around them, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the bush by the front window. Grandma Norma rose from her chair. She was not a very tall woman, and age had bent her posture slightly, but she carried herself with a certain dignity from years of standing at blackboards and addressing classrooms. "Go and wash up for dinner," she told Chizitere, picking up the oil lamp. "I made some jollof rice for us. I will serve it when you are ready." "Yes, Grandma," Chizitere responded, gathering her books. She hesitated as she moved toward the small cabinet where they kept her school supplies. On a shelf was a framed photograph of a young woman with kind eyes and a bright smile. The girl's gaze lingered on it, and her expression grew wistful. Noticing the direction of her look, Grandma Norma's voice softened. "Your mother was very beautiful, wasn't she?" Chizitere nodded slowly, though she had no memories of her mother, who had passed away when Chizitere was just a baby. She knew that face well from the photo. Yes, she was. Norma stepped closer and gently touched the frame, her eyes misting with memory. "She loved you very much, even though she held you only for a short time." Her fingers trembled slightly on the glass. "I see her in you every day, in your determination, in your smile. She wanted you to have the best education and the best life." The girl swallowed a lump in her throat. Even at 14, the absence of her mother was a tender ache in her heart, soothed only by the overwhelming presence of her grandmother's love. I hope she would be proud of me," Chizitere said in a small voice. Grandma Norma put an arm around the girl's shoulders, pulling her close. The embrace was warm and reassuring. "She would be, and I am proud of you too, my child. Always." She placed a kiss on Chizitere's forehead. They stood like that for a moment, 2 generations, bound tightly by love and loss and hope. Then, with a gentle squeeze, Norma ushered her granddaughter toward the back of the house to wash up. As Chizitere fetched water from the tap to clean hands and face, she could hear her grandmother humming a soft tone in the kitchen. It was a lullaby in Igbo that she often sang in the evenings, a song about hope and perseverance. The familiar melody floated through the air, mixing with the nighttime sounds and wrapping the home in gentle calm. Clean and refreshed, the girl joined her grandmother at the small dining table. Dinner was simple but delicious. Fragrant jollof rice with bits of fried plantain on the side, by the dim light of a rechargeable lamp, brought out now to save the oil lamp's fuel. They ate together. Grandma Norma said grace before the meal, thanking God for the food and for the opportunity to learn each day. Halfway through dinner, she looked at Chizitere seriously and said, "You know why I push you so hard, don't you?" Chizitere paused, her spoon midway to her mouth. She knew her grandmother's question was meant to be answered thoughtfully. Because, because you want me to be successful, she replied. You want me to learn and have a better future. Her grandmother nodded. Yes, education is the greatest gift I can give you. Books, knowledge, wisdom. Those will carry you further than money or fancy clothes or any inheritance. She gazed at the single bulb hanging from the ceiling, which flickered as the electricity threatened to go out again. When I was a girl, I had to fight to stay in school. My parents had little money and many did not see the value in a girl child going far in her studies. Chizitere listened intently. Though she had had bits of her grandmother's history before, it always inspired her anew. I walked miles every day to attend classes, Norma continued, her eyes distant with recollection. There were days I had no proper shoes, but I did not give up. A kind teacher took interest in me and helped me with extra books to read. Eventually, I became a teacher myself because I wanted to give others the chance that I had. The old woman reached across and gently tapped Chizitere's chest, right over her heart. So when I teach you, I am giving you more than just lessons from books. I am giving you a part of myself and a part of all those who taught me. Her voice held a quiet passion that made the girl's chest tighten with emotion. I understand, Grandma, Chizitere said softly. She reached up to hold her grandmother's work-worn hand. I promise I will work hard. I won't let your efforts be in vain. A smile broke out on Norma's face, deepening the crinkles at the corners of her eyes. My child, I know you will. You have always made me proud. They finished their meal with lighter chatter. Grandma made a gentle joke about how Chizitere nearly fell asleep while copying the proverb earlier, and the girl giggled, protesting that she was only resting her eyes. The night deepened and the sounds of the town grew more hushed, save for an occasional bark of a distant dog or the chirp of insects. Before bed, Chizitere cleared the table and washed the dishes, as was her nightly chore. Meanwhile, Grandma Norma prepared the living room for the next day's studies, stacking the books and setting the pencil jar in its place. In the small bedroom they shared, the girl changed into her simple night dress. Grandma was already sitting on the edge of the bed, thumbing through a one-letter-bound book that she read every night, her Bible. By the glow of a battery lantern, she whispered her prayers, thanking God for another peaceful day and asking for strength and wisdom for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. Chizitere climbed into bed beside her grandmother. Good night, Grandma, she murmured, snuggling close. Good night, my dear, Norma replied, wrapping an arm around the girl. She pulled the mosquito net down around them. Sweet dreams, tomorrow is a new day to learn something new. Within the safety of her grandmother's embrace, and by the familiar scent of Norma's floral soap, and the soft rustle of the net, Chizitere felt content. Outside, a gentle breeze made the curtains sway. She closed her eyes. In her final wakeful thoughts, she imagined the other children still out under the stars, laughing and telling stories. A tiny part of her wished she could join them without a care, but a stronger part was grateful. Grateful for the knowledge she gained each day, and for her grandmother's love, which guided her like a bright star through every darkness. In that peaceful town in Abia State, as grandmother and granddaughter slept, love and learning were intertwined, laying the foundation for a future that, while unknown, held the promise of something extraordinary. The next day, the sun rose bright and warm over the town. It was a Saturday, which meant no school. Chizitere woke early out of habit. After helping Grandma Norma with the morning chores, sweeping the front yard and fetching water, she settled on a wooden stool by the veranda to review one of her schoolworks. It was still early enough that the air was cool and filled with the singing of birds perched on the breadfruits in their compound. As the day progressed, the neighborhood came alive with the joyful noises of children freed from the classroom for the weekend. A group of kids had gathered in the dusty street in front of the house to play. They kicked a one plastic ball around, shrinking in the light when someone made a dramatic save or scored an imaginary goal. Others were skipping rope. Their laughter punctuating the slapping rhythm of the rope against the ground. From her spot on the veranda, Chizitere tried to focus on the book in her lap, a collection of comprehension passages, but the playful chaos outside was distracting. She raised her eyes from the page and watched for a moment. A few of the children she recognized from her class at school. They were having such fun that Chizitere felt a tug inside her chest. It would be nice to join them, to run and shout without a care, at least for a little while. One of the girls, Amaka, noticed Chizitere sitting by herself with her book. She nudged another child and pointed. Soon, a small cluster of them were looking her way and whispering. Chizitere pretended not to see, keeping her eyes on her book, but her heart sank. She had a feeling about what was coming. Chizitere! Amaka called out, waving an arm. Come and play with us! Chizitere glanced longingly at the ball skidding across the dirt and the ring of laughing kids. She opened her mouth, wanting to say yes. Just this once. But before she could answer, another voice chimed in. A boy named Ifeanyi, who lived 2 houses down. She won't come. He snickered loud enough for Chizitere to hear. She's glued to her books as usual. A couple of the children giggled. Chizitere felt her cheeks burn. I had to study a bit first, she replied, trying to keep her voice polite. Maybe later I can join you. Ifeanyi rolled his eyes dramatically. That's what you always say. By the time you finish your big books, it will be dark. You never come out to play. Another child in camp piped up with a teasing smile. Our little professor is too busy for fun. Chizitere bit her lip. She wanted to protest, to defend herself, to say that she did play sometimes. But the truth was, she rarely did. And everyone knew it. She lowered her eyes back to her book, hoping they would just leave her be if she ignored them. But Amaka walked a few steps closer, her hands on her hips. Chizitere, you're so boring these days. Always reading, always studying. Don't you get tired of it? I'm not boring, Chizitere murmured, still not looking up. What kind of Ifeanyi jeered. He picked up a ball and held it under one arm. Bookworm! Bookworm! He sing-songed cruelly. Chizitere, the bookworm has no life. At that, Chizitere's eyes stung with sudden tears. She blinked rapidly to chase them away. She did not want to cry in front of them. That would only encourage more teasing. Taking a deep breath, she closed her book and stood up. For a brief moment, anger fled in her chest. Just because I value my studies doesn't mean I have no life, she said, trying to keep her voice steady, though it quivered at the edges. Her response only made Ifeanyi laugh. He tossed the ball to another boy and started jumping around in an exaggerated manner. Oh, big words. Value my studies, he mimicked in a high-pitched tone, causing some of the children to laugh harder. Hear her? She sounds like an old woman, not a 40-year-old girl. Amaka, seeing Chizitere's distressed face, tugged on Ifeanyi's arm lightly. Stop it, she whispered to him, perhaps feeling a twinge of guilt, but Ifeanyi shrugged her off, caught up in the attention. Another voice suddenly cut through the giggles. It was deep and commanding. What is going on here? Grandma Noma had stepped out of the house. She had been inside sorting beans for lunch, but the noise outside had drawn her attention. Now she stood on the veranda, her hands on her hips in a posture that many of her former students would have recognized. The universal stance of a teacher about to scold misbehaving children. The group of kids fell silent, their eyes wide as they regarded the formidable figure of Grandma Noma. Even Ifeanyi's smile faded. He shifted awkwardly on his feet. Good morning, Nne, he mumbled, trying to sound polite. Grandma Noma nodded in acknowledgement, but her sharp gaze was on the faces of each kid. Is this how your parents raised you? To mock someone who is doing the right thing for herself? No one dared to answer. A few shook their heads. Chizitere stood frozen, feeling both relief at her grandmother's appearance and embarrassment that it had come to this. The old woman continued, her voice then. Education is nothing to be ashamed of. It is something to be proud of. If Chizitere chooses to read instead of playing sometimes, it only means she values her future. There is time for play. And there is time for study. Both are important. She looked directly at Ifeanyi, who was now staring at the ground, though digging nervously into the dirt. calling her names like boring and bookworm. How do those words taste in your mouth? Are they sweet? Ifeanyi quickly shook his head, not daring to meet her eyes. No, ma, he muttered. Grandma Norma let out a short, disapproving hum. Instead of teasing, perhaps, we could all learn from her dedication. Do you think all the successful people you hear about became great by playing all day and avoiding books? No, they worked hard when they needed to, and yes, they played too when it was time, but they did not neglect learning. The children nodded silently. A few exchanged glances. Some of them actually looked a little ashamed, especially Amaka, who shuffled her feet. Norma then sighed and had told something just a little. I'm not saying you shouldn't enjoy your childhood. Play is good. It keeps you healthy and happy. But don't drag someone down because they have different priorities. Next time you invite Chisidere to play and she says she has to study, maybe you could offer to help her or ask if you can all study together later. Wouldn't that be better than making fun of her? Yes, ma, a couple of them murmured in unison. Grandma Norma gave a firm nod. Good. Now, off you go. Enjoy your game and try to be kinder. She turned to go back inside but paused to look at her granddaughter. Her expression gentled as she said, Chizitere, after one more hour of your reading, you may join them for a short while before lunch, alright? Even the modest, dedicated student needs a little break. Chizitere managed a small smile. Yes, Grandma, thank you. Relief washed over her. The humiliation from moments before was ebbing away. The children slowly returned to their play. Subdued, Amaka gave Chizitere an apologetic wave and a faint smile before she ran off to rejoin the ball game. Ifeanyi was already dribbling the ball, pointedly avoiding looking back at the house, clearly eager to pretend nothing had happened. Chizitere sat back on her stool, her hands trembling slightly as she reopened her book. Thank you, Grandma, she whispered as Norma stepped closer to her. Her grandmother's face was kind now that the interlude was over. She rested a hand on Chizitere's shoulder. My dear, you don't need to thank me. I will always stand up for you. She gave a little squeeze. I know it's not easy. Other children might not understand you now, but one day they will see the results of your hard work and you will be glad you stayed the course. Chizitere nodded and inhaled deeply to steady herself. I just wish they wouldn't make fun of me. Sometimes I feel lonely. Norma's eyes filled with sympathy. She sat down on the edge of the veranda beside her granddaughter. I know, my child. I know it can be lonely, but you are not alone. I'm here with you, and she added, tilting the girl's chin up gently. You have something inside you that is very strong. All those lessons, all that knowledge, it will keep you company when others are not around. Trust me. Chizitere managed to truly smile this time. She laid her head against her grandmother's shoulder for a moment, finding comfort in her closeness. Okay, Grandma, I will try to remember that. Good girl, Norma replied softly, patting her back. Now, one more hour of study as promised. Then you can go and play a little before we cook lunch. Perhaps just a short game, Yes, Grandma, Chizitere agreed, her spirit lifting. With her grandmother by her side for a few minutes, the girl returned to her book. This time she found it easier to concentrate. The voices outside continued, but now they felt less hostile. She even felt a spark of hope that maybe later, when she joined them briefly, they might welcome her without teasing. Grandma Norma stayed there until she was sure Chizitere was fully immersed in her reading again. The older woman then rose and went back into the house, leaving the door ajar so she could keep an ear out. And so, the late morning sun climbed higher, shining down on the little town. On the street, children's laughter rang out once more as the game resumed in full swing. On the veranda, Chizitere returned a page and diligently underlined a sentence that she found important. Her heart was still tender from the teasing, but it was fortified by her grandmother's unwavering support. In that moment, she understood that while she might appear different from her peers now, the love and wisdom her grandmother poured into her was a gift beyond measure, one that would accompany her long after the sounds of childhood games faded. Life went on peacefully for several more months. Chizitere continued to excel in her studies And though she still spent most evenings reading with her grandmother, Grandma Norma made sure she took short breaks to play with the other children now and then. The stink of being called a bookworm faded as the days passed, especially with her grandmother's reassurance always fresh in her mind. In school, Chisitere's teachers noticed her outstanding performance and attributed it to her discipline at home. She often earned the top scores in class, and her essays were read aloud as examples for others. One humid afternoon, however, the steady rhythm of their lives abruptly changed. It began like any other day. The sun hung high and fierce in a pale blue sky, and Grandma Norma was in the kitchen stirring a pot of soup for lunch, while Tuesday recited a poem from memory as part of her practice. The savory aroma of egusi soup filled the air. Suddenly, a clattering sound came from the kitchen. It was the wooden spoon hitting the floor. Tuesday stopped mid-recital. "Grandma!" she called, concern treading her voice. There was no answer. Heart pounding, she rushed into the kitchen. She found her grandma leaning heavily against the counter, one hand clutching her chest and the other gripping the edge of the sink. The older woman's face was ashen, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. "Grandma, what's wrong?" Chistere cried, rushing to support her. Norma tried to speak, but only managed a strained whispering breath. I don't know," she panted. Her legs trembled, unable to hold her weight. Gently, Chistere helped her sit down on the cool tile floor, propping her against the cabinet. "I'll get help," Chistere said in a shaky voice, trying to sound calm, though panic was building inside her chest. The girl ran out the front door, scanning the street frantically. "Help! Somebody please help!" she shouted. As luck would have it, their next door neighbor, an older man named Mr. Eke, was coming home from the market. Seeing the distress on Chisitere's face, he hurried over. "What is it, my dear?" "It's Grandma, she collapsed," Chisitere said, already pulling him toward the house in desperation. In a minute, Mr. Eke and another neighbor had carefully carried Norma to his car. Chistere climbed into the back seat, cradling her grandmother's head in her lap. Tears blurred the girl's vision as she held on to the woman who was her whole world. "Please be okay, Grandma," she whispered. Her voice breaking, Norma's eyes were closed, and she was breathing shallowly, each breath a labored effort. The drive to the local hospital felt like an eternity. Every bump on the unpaved road jolted Chisitere's nerves further. In her mind, she kept praying silently. "Please, God, please, let my grandma be alright." She remembered how strong and energetic Norma had been just that morning, humming as she hung laundry. How could things change so suddenly? At last, they arrived at St. Mary's Hospital, a small but clean facility in the town. Nurses rushed out with a stretcher as soon as they saw Mr. Eke, half carrying, half dragging the semi-conscious older woman from the car. Chistere tried to follow them through the swinging double doors of the emergency ward, but a nurse gently held her back. "Let us take care of her. You wait here, okay, little one?" "She's my grandmother," Chistere managed, her voice trembling. "I need to be with her." The nurse, a kind-faced woman with a name tag that read Ilochi, bent down to look Chistere in the eye. "I know, dear. We'll do our best to help her, but you need to wait. We'll call you when she's stable." Mr. K placed a reassuring hand on Chistere's shoulder. "I will stay with you, don't worry." Reluctantly, and with tears streaming down her face, Chistere nodded. She watched helplessly as her grandma was whisked down the corridor and out of sight, the doors flapping shut behind the medical team. The waiting area smelled of antiseptic and was cooled by a slow-turning ceiling fan. Chistere sank onto one of the plastic chairs, hardly feeling the hard surface. Everything around her seemed to blur. The muted sound of a distant television, the hushed conversations of other worried families, the occasional rapid footsteps of doctors or nurses passing. She clenched her hands tightly in her lap, her fingernails digging into her palms as she fought back sobs. Mr. Eke sat beside her. Though he wasn't a relative by blood, he had known Norma for years. He gently asked Chistere for any phone numbers of family members he should call. That was when the painful truth sank in fully for the girl. Apart from a few distant relatives in another state, there was no one else close by. Her grandmother was her only immediate family since her mother's passing, and her father was not in her life at all, a man she had never known. There is no one, it's just us, Chistere said in a hollow voice, wiping her cheeks. No one I can call to come. All right then, Mr. Ike said softly, patting her back. You are not alone. I'm here, and other neighbors will come when they hear. We will all be here for your grandma. She's a strong woman. Don't worry, she'll be fine. Chistere nodded numbly, grateful for his presence even as fear gnawed at her. She remembered her grandmother's words from not long ago. You have something inside you that is very strong. All those lessons will keep you company even when others are not around. She tried to draw strength from inside, but right now, everything within her felt like it was crumbling. After what felt like hours, though in reality only 1 hour had passed, Nosilochi came out to the waiting area. Chistere jumped to her feet, searching the nurse's expression for clues. Your grandmother is stable for now, Nosilochi said kindly. We have moved her to a ward. You can see her, but only for a few minutes, alright? Yes, please. Chistere nodded rapidly. Mr. Eke stood as well. Go in, I'll wait out here or see if I can help with any paperwork, he told her. Chistere followed the nurse through the maze of corridors. Her heart pounded with a mix of hope and anxiety. Stable for now. This was repeated in her head. It means grandma was alive, maybe awake. They reached a small ward with just 2 beds. On one of them, she saw Grandma Norma lying under a crisp white sheet. An IV drip was connected to her arm, and an oxygen tube rested in her nose. Her eyes were closed, while the nurse approached and gently touched her shoulder. Those familiar eyes fluttered open. Grandma! Chistere whispered, rushing to her side. Norma's gaze slowly found her granddaughter's face. She looked weak, and her skin was unusually pale, but she managed a faint smile. My child, she said, voice very soft. Chistere carefully took her grandmother's hand in both of hers. It felt cold, so cold, that it frightened her. She rubbed it gently, trying to warm it. Grandma, you gave me such a scare, she said, tears starting anew in her eyes, but she tried to blink them away. How are you feeling? Norma drew a slow breath. I'm alright, love, she replied, though her voice was barely above a whisper and lacked its usual strength. Just a little tired. The nurse quietly checked the IV and the monitors, then gave Chistere a nod, indicating she could have a moment. I'll be just outside, she murmured, stepping away to give them some privacy. Chistere sniffled and tried to smile bravely for her grandmother. They said you will be okay, she said, half statement, half question, as if seeking confirmation. Grandma Norma squeezed her hand weakly. Whatever happens, I want you to remember that. Remember what I have always told you. Chistere frowned, sensing something in her grandmother's tone, a gentle urgency. What you have told me? Yes. Norma took a breath, and her dark brown eyes fixed on the girl's face with an intensity that belied her frail condition. Chistere, no matter what happens, never give up on your education. Promise me. A lump formed in Chistere's throat. She didn't like the way her grandmother was speaking, as if she might not be around much longer. Grandma, you're going to get better, she insisted, her voice trembling. We'll go home and you will teach me as always. You'll be fine. Promise me, Norma repeated, her gaze unwavering. Your education, it's your future. It's everything. Everything we have worked for. She paused, her breath catching. For a moment, fear flickered in her eyes, not fear for herself, but for her granddaughter's future. If I'm not there, we must carry on, study hard, achieve all the dreams we talked about. Tears spilled down Chistere's cheeks as she fervently replied, I promise, Grandma, I won't give up on my education. I'll keep studying hard, just like you taught me, but please, you have to get better. I still need you. Her voice broke on the last words. Norma's face softened with love. You have me. You will always have me, child, she whispered. Though her body was weak, she mustered the strength to reach up and touch Chistere's cheek. Wiping away a tear with her thumb, I am so proud of you, and I know you will do great things. Chisdere clutched her grandmother's hand against her face, nodding through her tears. I will make you proud, she managed to say. Just please rest and get well. I will be right here. A faint smile touched Norma's lips again. Her eyes, heavy with exhaustion, drifted to the window where a slice of afternoon sunlight peeked through the curtains. God is with you, she murmured, almost in a prayer. Always remember, knowledge is a treasure that will follow you everywhere. I will remember, Grandma, Chisdale replied, holding her grandmother's hand tightly until Nosilochi came back to gently usher her out so the patient could rest. For the next few days, Chisdale practically lived at the hospital. Neighbors brought her food and helped where they could. One of her teachers even visited when she heard the news. It was Mrs. Obi, her English teacher, who hugged Chisdale and prayed with her for her grandmother's recovery. The outpouring of care from community was comforting. But as the days passed, Chisdale grew more anxious. Some mornings, Grandma seemed to be improving. She would be awake, able to sip a little pap, eating porridge, and smile weakly at Chisdale's attempts at jokes. But in the evenings, her condition often worsened. She would become feverish and too weak to talk much. On the third night in the hospital, Chisdale awoke in a chair by her grandmother's bedside to a flurry of activity. The monitor alarms were blaring. Nurses and a doctor were in the room speaking in urgent tones. She heard the doctor say, her blood pressure is dropping. We are losing our pulse. Chisdale's heart dropped into her stomach. Grandma! She cried out, trying to move closer, but a nurse gently held her back, pushing her toward the door. She caught a final glimpse of her grandmother's face, peaceful, almost as if asleep, before the crowd of medical staff blocked her view. No, Grandma! Grandma, please! Chisdale was screaming, tears streaming down her face. As another nurse guided her family out into the hallway. You need to wait outside there, the nurse said, her eyes sad. In the hallway, Chisdale felt her world collapsing. She pressed herself against the wall and slid down to the floor, sobbing into her hands. It was a sound of pure despair, the kind of cry that empties one's lungs and soul at once. She prayed harder than she had ever had. Please, God, don't take her yet. Please, I need her. I promised her. I promised. Minutes passed like hours. Then the door opened and the doctor emerged, his face tired and drawn. One look at his expression, and Chisdale knew. She knew even before he spoke. And she shook her head violently, backing away against the wall. No, no, no. I'm sorry, the doctor said quietly. We did everything we could. Chisdale's visions swam. She felt weightless and heavy all at once, as if she were floating outside her body, watching a terrible scene unfold for someone else. Strong arms, Mr. Ike's arms, suddenly enveloped her as she began to wail. He had arrived moments earlier and heard the news. He held the grieving girl tightly as her cries echoed down the corridor. Grandma Norma was gone. The next days passed in a blur for Chisdale. Back at home, the house felt unbearably empty. The books on the table, the chair where Grandma always sat to teach her, even the faint scent of her perfume in the bedroom at night. Each thing was a reminder that the pillar of her life was no more. Relatives came from afar for the burial, which was conducted in the customary way in their ancestral village. Chisdale dressed in black and stood by as neighbors and family members sang hymns and shared stories of Norma's kindness and dedication, especially how many children she had taught and inspired in her years as a teacher. Chisdale remained mostly silent through it all, clutching to her chest a framed photograph of her mother that her grandmother had cherished. She was surrounded by people, yet she had never felt more alone. When they laid Grandma Norma to rest in the red earth under the big Udala tree, African star apple tree, behind the church, Chisdale placed that photo, the picture of her mother, gently beside the coffin for a moment, whispering, I will take care of it, just like you took care of me. After the funeral, the distant relatives left and neighbors returned to their routines. Some of them checked in on Chisdale, bringing food, or simply asking how she was holding up. But inevitably, life in the village moved on, even though For Chizitere, it felt like time had stopped. She moved through days in a daze of sorrow and disbelief. At night, she still half expected to hear her grandmother's voice telling her to adjust the lantern or repeat a sentence louder. In the mornings, she woke with tears already in her eyes, remembering that the one person who truly knew and loved her more than anything was gone. In the quiet of their home, Chizitere opened her school books but found that the words blurred together. The motivation that had burned bright within her seemed to have been extinguished with her grandmother's passing. She felt unmoored, as if the anchor that steadied her had been lifted, leaving her drifting and directionless. One evening, about a week after the funeral, Chizitere sat on the floor of the living room with her books spread around her. The loneliness in the house pressed on her like a weight. In frustration and grief, she slammed shut the math workbook that had once been filled with promises and progress. Sobs overtook her as she cried out in the empty room. "Grandma, you told me to carry on, but I don't know how. You told me never to give up on my education, but how can I do this without you?" Her voice echoed off the walls. There was no gentle reply. No warm hand to rub her back as she wept. Only silence answered her, making the ache in her heart even deeper. From that night on, Chizitere could barely bring herself to study. She still went to school. She knew her grandmother would have wanted at least that, but her teachers noticed that she was not the same attentive bright student she had been. In class, her mind wandered. At home, her homework remained only half done. The books that once were her treasures now felt like lead in her hands, heavy with the absence of the one person who had made learning joyful. Weeks turned into a month and the situation did not improve. Chizitere's grades began to slip. Where she once scored top marks, she now barely managed average. She rarely raised her hand in class anymore. The spark in her eyes had dimmed. Her teachers were concerned. Mrs. Obi, the English teacher, had a conversation with the principal, Mr. Adewale, about the change in Chizitere. They both knew of the grandmother's passing and understood the toll it could take, but they also hated to see such a promising student lose her way. After some deliberation, they decided to gently speak with Chizitere after school one day. Sitting in the principal's office, with the afternoon sun slanting in through the window, Chizitere stared at her hands in her lap as Mr. Adewale spoke. He expressed condolences again for her loss and then said, "Your teachers and I are a bit worried about you, Chizitere. We know you have been through something very hard. I won't pretend to imagine how you feel, but we want to help." "Yes," chimed in Mrs. Obi softly. "We all cared for your grandmother. She was an exceptional woman who believed so much in you. And we see so much potential in you too." Chizitere's throat tightened. She had come to the meeting out of respect, but she didn't really want to talk. No one truly understood what she had lost. "I'm okay," she murmured, not convincingly. They exchanged a brief glance. The principal folded his hands on the desk. "It's all right to not be okay," he said. "Losing someone close, it takes time to heal. We just want you to know that we are here for you. If you need extra help catching up on assignments, or someone to talk to, or even just a quiet place to sit during breaks, we can arrange that." Chizitere nodded dully. "Thank you, sir, ma'am," she said politely. She appreciated their concern, but the only person she truly wanted to talk to about her pain was no longer here. As she left the office, Mrs. Obi gave her a gentle hug. "Your grandma's wisdom is still with you, you know," the teacher whispered. "She's in your heart, and all that she taught you will guide you, even if you can't see her." Chizitere managed a polite smile before walking home alone. But inside, she felt unconvinced. If Grandma is with me, why do I feel so lost? She wondered. Every night, she lit a candle by her mother's photograph, which now stood beside a small picture of Grandma Norma that one of the relatives had framed for her after the funeral. She would whisper, "Good night," to them, half hoping to feel something, a sign, a presence, but nothing tangible came, only the stillness of the night and her own whispered breath. And so, the days went on. Chizere kept her promise to attend school, but her heart was only half there. Her dream of a bright future felt distant and unimportant without Grandma Norma to share it with. The once vibrant and dedicated girl had become a shadow of herself, silent, withdrawn, and aching with longing for the encouragement that had always been her guiding light. Months passed in a haze for Chizitere. The rains came and went, marking the season's change, and with each passing week, she learned to carry her grief a little more quietly. She still kept mostly to herself, her interactions with classmates limited to necessities. While she had not completely given up on school, her enthusiasm remained dampened. Then one morning, at the start of a new term, something happened that would alter the course of Chizitere's life once again. The principal made a special announcement during the school assembly. The students gathered in the dusty courtyard, straightening their uniforms and standing in neat lines under the flagpole, listening with growing excitement as Mr. Adewale cleared his throat and spoke. Our school has been invited to participate in the national academic competition, he announced in his deep, carrying voice. A ripple of murmurs spread through the students. Chizitere, standing near the middle of her class line, looked up dully, not particularly interested at first. This is a prestigious competition, the principal continued, open to students across the country. It will test knowledge in various subjects: mathematics, science, literature, general knowledge, and more. The winner of the competition will receive a full scholarship and sponsorship for further studies, as well as an opportunity to travel abroad to continue their education. Now, the murmuring turned into outright buzz. A scholarship, travel abroad. These were opportunities most of them had only dreamed of. Even Chizitere felt a spark of interest igniting somewhere deep inside. She knew such a prize could change someone's life forever. The competition will begin with a written examination to be held in 2 weeks. The principal went on. Any student who wishes to participate should give their name to their class teacher by the end of this week. We will select a representative or two from each class to sit for the exam. From there, high scorers will move on to state and national levels. So it was a multi-stage contest. The trio among the students was palpable now. Chizitere had snippets of excited chatter around her. I'm definitely signing up. Imagine going abroad to study. Wow! This is huge. My parents will be so proud if I even pass the first stage. Who do you think will represent our class? At that last question, Chizitere's heart skipped. Once upon a time, everyone would have naturally expected her to be a top choice. She had always been the star pupil, but now she glanced down at her feet, feeling a wave of shame wash over her. Her recent performance had been nowhere near her best. There were others in class, perhaps even Ifeanyi or Amaka or another, who might be choosing instead. As the assembly was dismissed and students filed back to their classrooms, the excited energy remained all around Chizitere. Classmates speculated and debated who should enter. A couple of bold students went straight up to their teacher, Mr. Dike, to express interest. Chizitere walked silently, her mind in turmoil. The idea of the competition tugged at her. A scholarship and the chance to study abroad had been the kind of dream Grandma Norma encouraged her to aim for. How many evenings had they sat on the veranda, Grandma telling her about the vast world beyond their town, about universities and libraries filled with more books than one could read in a lifetime? How often had they imagined together that one day Chizitere might travel to places Grandma herself had never seen? Yet, thinking of those dreams now only made her heart ache. I have nobody to encourage me anymore, she thought. No one to help me prepare or to cheer me on. Her grandma's absence felt even larger in that moment. If Norma were alive, she would have been pushing Chizitere forward, already gathering books and planning study schedules to ensure her granddaughter could win. In class, Mr. Dike asked anyone interested in the competition to raise their hand. Several hands shot up eagerly. Chizitere's hand twitched, but she did not raise it. She kept her eyes glued to her desk. Mr. Dike noticed. Chizitere, Would you like to try? You have always been a strong student. There was an encouraging look on his face. He wanted to see her put her name forward. All eyes turned to her. She felt her face grow warm. Part of her wanted to sink into the floor under their gaze, and part of her wanted to stand and say yes with confidence. But that confident girl felt like someone she knew from a long time ago. I don't know, Chisde replied softly. Ifeanyi, the same boy who had teased her for being a bookworm, at a couple of seats away, and now he frowned and spoke up, not unkindly. Come on, Chisde, you should enter. You used to beat everyone in exams. You could do it. She glanced at him in surprise. There was no mockery in his tone this time, only a plain statement of fact. Some of the other students nodded in agreement. It seemed even those who once teased her had recognized her academic strength and perhaps failed by school pride or genuine respect. They oddly now seemed to want her to represent them. Chistere's throat felt tight. She wasn't sure if she still had the ability in her. What if she failed and embarrassed herself? What if everyone was wrong about her? Sensing her hesitation, Mr. Dike gave a small smile. Tell you what, you don't have to decide this minute. Think about it for a day or two. Remember, the deadline is Friday. If you want to sign up, just let me know by then, alright? She nodded gratefully, and the class moved on to other discussions. That evening, Chisdere walked home alone in deep thought. The dusty road seemed longer than usual. Children were out playing as usual, and some waved to her. She waved back absently. Her mind was on the competition, weighing fear against hope. At home, she unlocked the door to the quiet house. The late afternoon sun filtered through windows, illuminating notes of dust in the air. Chisdere set her school bag down and walked over to the little cabinet where her grandmother's and mother's photographs stood. She touched the frame of her grandmother's photo lightly. The face that gazed back, kind, strong, full of quiet encouragement, made tears prick her eyes. What should I do, Grandma? She whispered. I wish you were here to tell me. I feel so lost. Only silence and the ticking of the wall clock answered. Chisdere sighed and sank into the armchair, closing her eyes. For the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to recall vividly one of the last conversations she had had with her grandmother. No matter what happens, never give up on your education. How passionately Grandma had made her promise. At the time, Chisdere had been desperate not to lose her, insisting she would be fine. But Grandma had known there might come a time when Chisdere would have to move forward on her own steam. Never give up on your education, she repeated to herself softly. She looked around the small living room, at the shelves lined with books and the table where they spent countless hours studying. Everything in this house resonated with her grandmother's devotion to learning. Chisdere inhaled deeply and made a decision. Grandma didn't raise a quitter. She may have faltered this past month, but perhaps this competition was the very thing she needed to reignite her purpose. It was as if in her heart she could feel a gentle nudge, a whisper of her grandmother's spirit telling her, go on, enter, I'm with you. She went to her school bag, pulled out a notebook, and on a blank page wrote boldly at the top, National Academic Competition Preparation. It felt almost like old times, making a study plan the way she used to with Grandma. That night, for the first time since Norma's death, Chisdere turned on the desk lamp and sat down with one of her thickest textbooks, a general studies compendium. It covered everything from math formulas to historical dates, science facts to library devices. It would be a lot to review in the short time she had, but she was determined to try. 2 hours ticked by as she pored over the page. At first, it was difficult. Her mind, out of habit, kept expecting her grandma's voice to correct or guide her. But gradually, she started murmuring to herself as she read, pretending Grandma was listening. When she hit a difficult math problem, she closed her eyes and imagined Grandma saying, show me your steps. And Chisdere would methodically work it out on scrap paper, almost hearing the familiar encouragement. When she practiced writing on essay introduction, she could almost hear Grandma's critic. Hook the reader in the first line, my dear. Try again. and she would revise recalling those lessons. It hurt. It hurt so much that grandma wasn't physically there. Sometimes her vision blurred with tears, and she had to stop for a minute to calm down. But at the same time, she felt a small warmth in her chest that she hadn't felt in a long while. The warmth of purpose and connection. In a way, during those study sessions, she felt as though her grandmother's love was indeed still around her, nudging her along, guiding her hand over the page. By the end of the week, Chisdere went to Mr. Dike and quietly told him she would like to sign up for the competition. A pleased grin spread across her teacher's face. "I'm glad to hear that," he said. "I will submit your name. The preliminary exam is next Wednesday. Let's get you ready." In the days leading up to the test, a few teachers held short after-school coaching sessions for the contestants from each class. Chisdere attended them and listened intently to every tip and review question. Her classmates were surprisingly supportive. Ifeanyi lent her a quiz book he had, and Amaka, who excelled in science, shared some notes with her. It seemed that, in hoping their school would shine, they would set aside any past teasing, or perhaps they saw how serious and quiet she was and felt that kindness was better than ridicule. Before she knew it, Wednesday arrived, the day of the first stage exam. Chisdere wore her best school uniform that day. It was crisply ironed, and she had polished her brown school shoes until they almost gleamed. As she got ready in the mirror that morning, she clutched the locket she always wore around her neck. Inside the small silver pendant was a tiny photo of her mother, a keepsake her grandmother had given her on her 10th birthday for courage and remembrance. Grandma had said when she clasped it around young Chisdere's neck. Now, Chisdere held it and closed her eyes. "Be with me today," she whispered, whether to her mother or grandmother or both, she wasn't sure. The exam was held at a larger school in the neighboring city. A short bus ride away, the school arranged a bus, and Chisdere, along with 5 other students from various classes and 2 teachers, went as a group. The bus ride was filled with the nervous chatter and last-minute revisions. Chisdere stayed mostly quiet, reviewing notes in her lap. But when someone asked a practice question aloud, she would pause to consider it or answer softly if she knew it. Her peers seemed to respect her focus and occasionally sought her confirmation on tough questions. At the exam venue, she was amazed to see hundreds of students from different schools, all miling out, waiting to enter the hall. They wore different uniforms of various colors, a sea of blues, greens, whites, and maroons. It hit her just how big this competition was. The nerves in her stomach tightened. She realized that many of these students probably had complete support systems, teachers or parents who coached them. She felt a pang of self-doubt. What chance do I have, coming from a small town, studying on my own? As if sensing her fear, Mrs. Obi, who had come as one of the chaperones, placed a hand on her shoulder. "You will do great, Chisdere," she said softly. "Believe in yourself. Your grandma would be so proud of you for coming this far." Chisdere nodded, swallowing hard. "Thank you, ma," she replied. She took a deep breath. The image of her grandmother's face filled her mind, and she stood a little straighter. "I promised I would do this," she reminded herself. "I won't give up." Soon, they were ushered into a large hall, filled with rows of desks and chairs. The fluorescent light overhead cast a bright glare on the polished concrete floor. Chisdere found her assigned seat and sat down. On the desk was a question booklet and a sheet for answers. She carefully wrote her name and school on the top as instructed. Looking around briefly, she saw some students fidgeting, some tapping their pencils, others closing their eyes in silent prayers. She did the same, bowing her head for a moment and sending a plea heavenward. "God, please help me. And Grandma, if you can see me, help me remember everything you taught me." "Begin," a proctor announced. Chisdere turned to the first page of the questions. Almost at once, her heart lodged. The questions seemed very difficult. They were not straightforward textbook queries, but challenging problems that required deep thought and logic. The first section was math, and the very first problem was a complex scenario involving fractions and time calculations that she couldn't solve at first glance. Immediately, anxiety surged within her. "What if I can't do any of this?" She panicked inwardly. Her pencil hovered uselessly above the paper. Her hands began to tremble, and she could feel the prick of tears threatening her eyes. No, not now. I can't cry now. For a moment, everything she had studied threatened to fly from her mind. Her vision blurred, and all she could see were those intimidating words and numbers swimming on the page. Other students around her were already scribbling answers or flipping pages, and a wave of despair hit her. Maybe I was foolish to think I could do this. Just as a tear rolled down her cheek, Chizitere felt something, a warmth, gentle yet unmistakable, on her right shoulder, as if a hand had rested there softly. It was the same shoulder Grandma used to pat when she did well or when she needed comforting. And then she heard it, so quiet that it was almost inside her own mind, yet it was clear and real to her. I'm always here. Chizitere's eyes widened. She quickly turned her head to see who it was, but there was no one immediately behind her who could have touched her. The student to her right was hunched over his paper, and to her left was an empty desk. The student assigned had apparently not shown up. No one was near enough to have placed a hand on her shoulder, and yet she felt it. The warmth lingered, spreading through her like a comforting blanket. Her racing heart began to slow. She inhaled deeply and realized the trembling in her hands had steadied. The voice, that beloved voice, echoed in her mind. I am always here. It was Grandma Norma's voice, just as clear as she had spoken next to her ear. A calmness descended on Chizitere. The tears that had threatened to spill were now forgotten. She closed her eyes for the briefest of moments, a small smile forming on her lips. Thank you, Grandma, she thought, hope rekindling like a glowing ember catching flame. She opened her eyes and looked at the first marked question anew. This time she read it carefully, dissecting it like she had done so many times in her practice sessions. And as she thought, a distant memory surfaced. It was one of those nights on the veranda with an oil lamp glowing softly. Grandma Norma had given her a tricky math puzzle about sharing food at a party involving fractions and time, somewhat similar in complexity to this equation. She could almost hear her grandmother's steady voice asking, if half the cake was eaten in 15 minutes, how long to eat the whole cake at that rate? She remembered how she had struggled at first and how Grandma had guided her to break the problem into parts. In the exam hall, Chizitere applied the same approach. Break the tough question into smaller steps. She started writing, solving piece by piece, as that memory guided her reasoning. In a few minutes, she arrived at an answer for the first question. She glanced at her wall. It looked plausible. A tiny surge of confidence bloomed. She moved to the next question, which was geometry problem. For a second, old fear tried to creep in. Geometry had never been her favorite, but she rolled her shoulders, still feeling that residual warm presence. I recalled how every evening Grandma made her practice drawing shapes and learning their properties. She remembered sitting at the table drawing triangles and circles, and Grandma peering over her glasses saying, remember, the sum of angles in a triangle is always 180 degrees. Armed with that recollection, Chizitere tackled the geometric problem. Sure enough, one step after another, the path to the solution became clear. And she continued. It seemed each section of the exam reached her knowledge in a different area, and in each one, Chizitere found that the answers were within her, placed there by years of careful study with Grandma. A challenging vocabulary brought back the sound of Grandma pronouncing a difficult word during a reading session and making her repeat it. She could almost hear Norma's gentle correction of her pronunciation and explanation of the word's meaning. And with that memory, Chizitere recognized the term on the exam and picked right synonym. A science question about the human heart conjured an image of one of the storybooks she had read, a children's encyclopedia that Grandma got her for her 10th birthday. She remembered the diagram of the heart they had studied just for fun and how fascinated she was by the fact that the heart never stops beating. Her grandmother had laughed and tapped her own chest, saying, this heart works hard, just like you must with your studies. Now, recalling that drawing and those notes, Chizitere confidently answered the question about blood circulation. Midway through the exam, there was a short essay section. The prompt was to write about a personal challenge and how one overcame it. Chizitere's breath caught when she read that. Of all the topics, She had been through one of the hardest challenges of her life recently. She hesitated, knowing that writing about it would stir emotions, but perhaps, she thought, this was another chance to draw strength from her experience and from Grandma's wisdom. She began her essay describing how she lost her mother early and raised by her grandmother, who instilled in her a love of learning. Her pen moved surely, the words flowing from her heart. She recounted how losing her grandmother nearly broke her spirit, but she almost gave up on everything. But now she found courage again by remembering the values and lessons her grandmother taught her. As she wrote the concluding lines, tears welled in her eyes. But these were not tears of panic or sorrow alone. They were mixed with gratitude. She ended with a simple reflection about knowledge and love lasting forever, something she had come to realize deeply. Finishing the essay, she blinked away the moisture from her eyes so it wouldn't smudge the ink, and took a steadying breath. She could feel a quiet peace within her, as though Grandma's presence had been sitting with her through the entire exam. Finally, the invigilator announced, 5 minutes remaining. Chistere glanced through her answer sheet, filling a couple of last blanks in the general knowledge section. One question asked for the capital city of Asian country. She wasn't entirely sure of the answer, but then she recalled a map puzzle she had solved with Grandma 2 years ago during a long school strike that pointed out capitals of various countries from phone. She quickly jotted down what she believed was the right city, just as the time elapsed. Stop writing and put your pens down, the vigilator called. Chistere set her pen down. A profound sense of relief and contentment washed over her. She had done it. She had not given up. In fact, she felt that she had done the very best she could possibly do. She whispered a soft thank you to God, to her grandmother, to whatever benevolent force had reached out to her in her moment of need. As she stood and handed in her paper, she allowed herself a small peaceful smile. It surprised a few students who noticed. They had seen her tearful and panicked at the start, and now she looked calm, even radiant. One of the girls from another school whispered, "She looks like she enjoyed that test or something," baffled by the serene expression in Chistere's face. Outside the hall, the afternoon sun was bright and a gentle breeze had picked up, rustling the trees. The teachers from her school hurried to gather their students. Many were chattering about the exam, some saying it was too hard, others boasting about questions they knew. Chistere walked quietly amidst the commotion until she saw Mrs. Obi and the others from her school. "How was it, my dear?" Mrs. Obi asked, looking concerned as she approached. She had seen Chistere's initial distress from afar and had been worrying. Chistere thought for a moment, then answered honestly, "It was challenging, but I tried my best." There was a light in her eyes as she spoke that hadn't been there in months. Something about her demeanor made the teacher smile and pat her back. "Sometimes that's when we truly shine, when things are hard but we give it our all," she said. On the bus ride home, as others discussed answers and argued over who was right, Chistere gazed out the window, turning out the noise. She clutched her locket and felt it at peace. No matter the result, she felt she had regained something precious in that exam hall. Her confidence, her sense of purpose, and above all, the reassuring knowledge that her grandmother's love and teachings were still guiding her. 2 weeks after the exam, life at school had returned to normal for most students, though those who took part in the competition waited with bated breath for the results. Chistere went about her days quietly, feeling more at peace than she had in a long time. She didn't boast or speculate about her performance. In fact, she hardly talked about the exam at all. Only in her heart did she occasionally replay moments of it, marveling at how calm she had become after feeling that warm presence. It felt almost like a dream. On the morning the results were to be announced, the principal called for a special assembly once again. There was a sense of anticipation in the air. Rumors had circulated that the school received some news regarding the competition. Chistere stood among her peers, trying to steady her breathing. She had told herself that whatever happened, she would be proud for simply attempting it and giving her all. Still, she couldn't completely quell the butterflies in her stomach. She clutched her locket tightly in one hand. Mr. Adewale stepped forward, a sheet of paper in his hand and a broad smile on his face. "I have excellent news," he began, his voice booming. "The results of National Academic Competition's first stage are out, and I'm proud to announce that one of our own students not only passed but achieved the highest score in the entire nation. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. Students and teachers looked. Highest score in the nation. Chisere felt her heart leap into her throat. A strange hush fell as everyone silently wondered who it could be. The principal's eyes were shining as he declared, Chizitere Kalu of JSS3 is the top scorer with the highest marks ever recorded in this competition's history. For a moment, Chizitere was sure she must misheard. Her top in the nation, highest ever. Then the reality of his words sank in as her classmates erupted in cheers and applause. The quiet girl, who had been living in the shadows of grief, suddenly found all eyes on her, this time not with mockery or pity, but with admiration and astonishment. Come up here, Chizitere. The principal beckoned, clapping enthusiastically. In a daze, she stepped out of the line. Her legs felt wobbly as she made her way to the front, but the applause and whoops of joy from her schoolmates built her forward. She caught sight of her teachers, Mr. Dike punching the air in triumph, Mrs. Obi wiping a tear of joy, and even stern Mr. Adewale grinning from ear to ear. As Chizitere reached the podium, the principal shook her hand. Well done, my girl, well done, he said, his voice full of pride. He handed her a certificate that had been sent by the competition organizers officially, proclaiming her as the highest scorer in this round. It also detailed the scholarship she had earned by this achievement, full secondary and tertiary education sponsorship, and an invitation to an award ceremony abroad, where she would also get to visit a partner school overseas. It was overwhelming. Chizitere looked out at the sea of faces. The entire school was cheering. She spotted Ifeanyi and Amaka in the crowd. Ifeanyi gave her a thumbs up with a sheepish grin, and Amaka was practically bouncing with excitement on Chizitere's behalf. Some of the girls were actually chanting her name now. Chizitere! Chizitere! Her cheeks flushed with happiness and disbelief. She wished so dearly that her grandmother could have been here to see this moment. I hope you are watching, Grandma, she thought, tears of joy gathering in her eyes. The principal asked if she wanted to say a few words. Public speaking was never something Chizitere had imagined herself doing, but standing there with everything she had been through, she felt a clarity and courage welling up. She took the microphone, hands trembling slightly. The schoolyard fell silent in expectation. Chizitere swallowed and began softly. I want to thank all of you, my teachers, my fellow students, for believing in me. Her voice gained strength as she continued. Some of you know that I lost my grandmother not too long ago. A gentle quiet fell as everyone listened intently. She was the one who raised me and taught me everything I know. When I took this exam, I felt like she was there with me. Her eyes looked upward for a moment, shining. I could not have done it alone. She held up the certificate slightly. This is as much her achievement as it is mine. There was a soft murmuring of assent and emotion from the crowd. A few teachers dabbed at their eyes. My grandmother always told me, never give up on your education. I almost did after I lost her. But I'm glad I found the strength to continue. Because now I see that she was right. Education opens the world to you. And, she added, voice trembling but determined, the people we love, who guided us, even when they are gone, their love stays with us. It guides us still. She paused, then finished with a heartfelt, thank you everyone, and took a step back, exhaling deeply. For a moment, all was quiet, and then a strong wave of applause surged forth. Some students even wiped tears from their faces. Her words had touched them. The principal patted her shoulder proudly and signaled it was time to end assembly. As Chizitere walked back to her class line, she was swarmed by classmates congratulating her. She got more handshakes and pats on the back in a few minutes than she had in her whole life. Ifeanyi was among the first to reach her. He scratched his head, looking a bit shy. I'm sorry for how I teased you before. He blurted out, You are really cool, Chizitere. You deserve this. She smiled warmly, surprising even herself with how readily she felt at peace with everyone. Thank you, Ifeanyi, she said simply. It means a lot. Amaka hugged her tight, squarely. You did it. We're so proud of you. The rest of the day was like a dream. Teachers were congratulating her in every class. Some students from other classes came just to get a look at the girl who got the highest score. Chistere brought the attention with modesty, attributing her success to her hard work and her grandma's teachings. Whenever someone asked how she did it, after school, she hurried home, eager to share the news in her own special way. She entered the empty house, but this time it didn't feel quite as empty. Something about her triumph made the space feel alive again. In the living room, she carefully set down her bag and pulled out the certificate. She walked to the cabinet where the photograph stood, placing the certificate right beside Grandma Norma's photo. She lit a fresh candle, as she did every evening. The flame sprang to life, steady and bright. Chizitere sat on a stool facing the photographs. Her eyes were on her grandmother's face, taking in the kind eyes and gentle smile captured there. "We did it, Grandma," she whispered, holding back the tears that threatened to fall. These tears were happy ones, and they flowed freely. "I kept my promise. I didn't give up. I wish you were here to see, but I know somehow you know. This is all because of you." At that moment, a soft breeze from nowhere in particular wafted through the room. The candle's flame flickered and danced, casting playful shadows on the wall. It was odd because the windows were shut and the evening was calm. Chizitere felt again that familiar warmth at her shoulder, and in the quiet room, she almost heard the echo of a loving voice saying, "I am proud of you, my child." A single sob of joy escaped her, and she smiled through her tears. "Thank you," she murmured, touching the frame of the photo lovingly. She knew in her heart that her grandmother had given her a sign, a gentle acknowledgement of her achievement, and a reminder that she was indeed always by her side. From that day on, Chizitere never truly felt alone again. Whenever she faced difficulties in life, she would remember that extraordinary moment during the competition and the flicker of the candle flame at home. It gave her the faith that her grandmother's spirit was guiding her still. The scholarship opened new doors just as promised. Not only did she finish secondary school with flying colors, but she also got the opportunity to travel abroad. The first trip was to attend an international youth science camp as part of her prize, and it was the first time she had ever been on an airplane. She remembers sitting on that flight, high above the clouds, feeling both excited and nervous. As the plane took off and she felt a jolt of anxiety, she closed her eyes and felt a calm presence wash over her like a comforting blanket, soothing her fears. "You are flying towards your future," she imagined Grandma saying. "Don't be afraid." Chistere went on to study at a prestigious university overseas, supported by the sponsorship she won. There were some times during exams in university when the pressure was enormous and she felt like giving up. Late, long nights of studying in a foreign country, far from home, sometimes made her feel isolated. But in those quiet moments in the library, when she was exhausted and stressed, she would close her eyes and feel that same gentle pat on her shoulder, as if Norma were right there encouraging her. And she would hear in her mind, "Keep going, my child." Instantly, her resolve would strengthen. She would push through. Years passed, and Chizitere grew from a shy, grieving girl into a confident, accomplished young woman. She never forgot where she came from or the people who helped her along the way. After completing her studies abroad, she decided to return to Nigeria, to her hometown, and give back to her community. With the knowledge and experience she had gained, she set up an after-school program in Abia State, specifically for children who had lost parents or who came from a disadvantaged background. She knew better than anyone how crucial support and encouragement were for a child's success. On a warm afternoon, in that same peaceful town in Abia, now more than a decade after her grandmother's passing, Chizitere found herself in a classroom once again, but this time as a mentor and teacher. The room was filled with eager faces of boys and girls, some orphaned, some from very poor homes, all looking up to her as an inspiration. On the chalkboard behind her was written in neat letters, Norma Education Center, named after her grandmother. A little girl in the front row, who had lost her own mother recently, raised her hand and asked timidly, "Auntie Chizzy, how did you become so smart? Who taught you when you were little?" Chizitere smiled warmly at the child. In that girl's curious eyes, she saw a reflection of herself at that age, hungry for knowledge, yearning for guidance. She also saw the shadow of loss that dimmed the girl's youthful sparkle, and her heart went out to her. "I had a very special teacher. She replied, her voice gentle. My grandmother. She taught me almost everything and encouraged me to learn. Another boy, who often struggled to keep up in class because he worked many hours helping his widowed father after school, piped up, is your grandmother still teaching you? A hush fell as some older kids who knew Chizidere's story elbowed him. Her grandma died, one whispered. The boy's face fell, realizing his mistake. Chizidere raised a hand and mom was quieted. She took a step closer to the children, perched on a desk so that she was at eye level with them, and said, It's okay. It's a good question. She took a deep breath and continued with a bright, reassuring expression. Although my grandma Noma is no longer here with me in person, in a way, she's still teaching me. The children looked puzzled. Chizidere's smile grew as she explained. You see, everything she taught me lives on inside of me. Every book we read, every lesson, every kind word or advice, it's all here. She tapped her temple lightly, then her heart. And whenever I am unsure or afraid, I remember what she taught me. And it's like she's right there guiding me. The little girl in the front row raised her voice. Sometimes I feel lonely without my mama. Do you think I can still make her proud even though she's in heaven? At this, Chizidere felt a tender emotion well in her chest. She reached out and took the girl's small hand in hers. I have no doubt, she said softly, that you can make her very proud. And I believe she's watching over you, just like my grandma watches over me. She looked around the room at all the young faces, earnest and hopeful. She realized this was her chance to share the ultimate lesson her grandmother's love had given her. Claiming her truth gently, Chizidere imparted the words that had become her guiding principle. Those we love never leave, she said, her eyes shining with conviction. They stay in our wisdom. The classroom was very, very quiet as the children absorbed this. A few of the older ones nodded in understanding, and the younger ones, even if they didn't fully grasp it yet, seemed comforted by the soothing certainty in her voice. Chizidere continued, as long as you remember what your loved ones taught you, the good things, the lessons, the love, they are never truly gone. They live on through you and all the things you achieve. Every time you learn something new or do something good, it's like they are right there, smiling and saying, that's my child. A smile spread across the little girl's face, and she wiped away a tear. The boy who had asked about her grandmother raised his hand again, this time with a grin, like how you named this center after your grandma. So it's like part of her is here teaching us too? Chizidere laughed softly and nodded, feeling tears of happiness in her own eyes. Exactly! I named it after her so that her legacy of teaching and love would continue. In a way, through me, she's still helping children learn. In the fading afternoon light, Chizidere led the class in a fun exercise, a tough riddle that her grandmother once taught her. And the children eagerly worked on it together. The laughter and the scratching of pencils on paper filled the room with life. As Chizidere watched them, her heart overflowed with gratitude. She remembered a time when she had sat on a similar bench, unsure of the future, guided by a strict but loving hand. Now, she was that guiding hand for others. She silently thanked her grandmother for every sacrifice and every lesson. At the end of the day, after the children had gone home with new things learned and smiles on their faces, Chizidere stood alone in the quiet classroom, tidying up. The sun was setting, casting golden beams through the window shutters. Dust motes danced in the light, reminding her of that afternoon in her childhood living room when she had sought guidance from a photograph. She walked to the front of the class where a large framed photo hung on the wall. It was of Grandma Noma in her teacher's uniform from decades ago, smiling gently. It watched over the room like a guardian. Chizidere touched the frame lightly and whispered, Thank you, Grandma. Your love lives on. At that moment, a soft breeze, much like the one that had made a candle flicker years ago, came through the open window, ruffling the papers on the desks. Chizidere closed her eyes, feeling that familiar comforting presence wash over her once more. In her mind, she had the echo of a beloved voice, full of pride and affection. Well done, my child. She opened her eyes and smiled, her soul at peace. Love had indeed become the voice that guided her long after the person was gone. And in carrying that love forward, she knew her grandmother would truly live forever through every success, every child helped, and every bit of wisdom passed on. The story teaches that love and learning do not end when a person is gone. Knowledge, discipline, and care, their voice keeps living inside you as courage, good choices, and skill. Even in grief, holding to your studies and values turns pain into strength. Success then becomes a way to honor their sacrifice. In this way, those we love never really leave. They stay alive in our wisdom and in the lives we help. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Chizitore on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with our journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V, and do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.